You probably think that glass of wine at 8 p.m. is the only thing standing between you and total burnout, that your evening edible is natural self-care, that your third coffee before noon is just getting through the day. But what if I told you all three are keeping your stress system stuck in overdrive, and the calm you feel is borrowed against tomorrow's anxiety? My mother struggled with alcoholism. Growing up, I never knew what I would find when I came home from school. In my head, I imagined her falling down the stairs or burning the house while cooking. I watched her borrow calm from a bottle every single evening, and I have spent my entire career learning exactly what that loan costs the nervous system, the borrowed calm mechanism. Let me explain what is actually happening in your brain when you pour that drink. Your body runs on a cortisol rhythm. Cortisol is your main stress hormone, and it's supposed to peak in the morning around 10 to 20 micrograms per deciliter, so you feel alert and ready. Then it's supposed to drop through the afternoon down to 3 to 10 and hit its lowest point around midnight so you can sleep. That curve isn't random. It's your nervous system's daily schedule. Alcohol, cannabis, and caffeine don't reduce that stress. They move it, they interrupt the rhythm. Let me say that again, because this is the part my clients always miss. When you drink wine in the evening, you're raising cortisol at the exact moment your body is trying to lower it. When you use cannabis to relax, you're blunting the brain circuits that process recovery. And when you drink coffee in the afternoon, you're pushing cortisol back up when it should be sliding down. So what does chronic use actually do to that curve? Researchers at Yale call this the stress pathophysiology of addiction. And they have shown that chronic substance use flattens the natural cortisol curve. Your baseline gets higher, your peaks get weaker, and your body forgets how to return to calm. Here is the part that surprised me when I first learned it. Stress and addictive substances act on the exact same brain pathway, the mesolimbic dopamine reward system. A 2008 review in the Journal of Clinical Investigation showed that chronic stress and chronic drug exposure both reshape the same neurons. So when you're stressed and you reach for a substance, you're not soothing the stress system, you're feeding it the same chemical language it already speaks. Alcohol suppresses the brain cells that normally act as brakes on cortisol production, so your brain thinks it's under more threat, not less. Cannabis delays REM sleep, which is the phase where your brain processes emotional stress. And caffeine, even in habitual users, triggers a direct cortisol spike. A 2024 study found that people who use caffeine daily still release more cortisol under psychosocial stress than non-users. The tolerance is only partial. The spike is still there. That's the loan. You feel calm now because you're borrowing tomorrow's resilience. And the interest is brutal. Higher baseline anxiety, worse sleep, a flattened cortisol curve that makes every morning feel like an emergency. Alcohol, the evening unwind that steals tomorrow. Let's look at the three habits I see most often among the women I coach. And let's start with the one that wears the best disguise, because it's everywhere. Alcohol is the most socially accepted stress reliever on the planet. Wine culture, mummy juice, after work drinks. We joke about it because if we didn't joke, we would have to admit how many of us are using it to survive the evening. And I'm not judging that impulse. I grew up watching my mother reach for a bottle to quiet her mind. I know how seductive that borrowed calm feels. For a few hours, the noise stops. But here is what happens inside your body. Acute alcohol raises cortisol and activates your HPA axis, the same stress highway we just talked about. It also suppresses REM sleep in the first half of the night. REM isn't optional. That's when your brain processes emotional memory and resets your stress responses. When alcohol steals that phase, you don't feel it at the time. You feel relaxed, you feel drowsy, but at 3 a.m., your brain wakes up because it didn't finish the work. And here is the trap. You don't blame the wine. You blame your job, your boss, your life. Then the curve flattens. Chronic use pushes your evening cortisol higher than it should be, and it weakens your morning cortisol awakening response. So you wake up tired instead of alert. Your emotional regulation is poorer the next day, and that makes you crave the same wine the following evening because your baseline anxiety is now higher than before. Researchers call this stress-induced relapse. It's a loop that happens in ordinary kitchens every night. The more you borrow, the more you owe. And the debt shows up as that 3 a.m. wake up, the Sunday night dread, and the feeling that your nerves are frayed by Tuesday. I want you to hear this carefully. I'm not saying you're an alcoholic if you drink wine to relax. I'm saying your nervous system doesn't know the difference between 1 glass and 3 when it comes to cortisol and sleep. The biology responds to the substance, not your intentions. And if you're already stressed from work, from parenting, from the mental load of running a business, then alcohol is pouring fuel on a fire you're trying to extinguish. Cannabis, the fake relaxation that blunts recovery. Maybe you skip the wine and reach for something that feels safer because it's natural. I hear this all the time. Cannabis edibles, vaping, a little something before bed. Many professionals switched because they think it's a healthier way to unwind. The problem is that natural doesn't mean harmless when it comes to your stress recovery. Cannabis affects your endocannabinoid system, which is one of the systems that helps regulate stress recovery. Acute use can feel calming because it dampens activity in the amygdala. That's the fear center. So yes, you feel less anxious in the moment. But chronic use disrupts sleep architecture and REM rebound. Your brain needs REM to process the day. Cannabis delays that processing. You feel relaxed because you're not processing the stress, not because the stress is gone. The stress is still sitting in your nervous system like unread emails. You just muted the notification. Rajita Sinha's 2024 review in the Journal of Clinical Investigation notes that cannabis activates the same autonomic and HPA stress arousal pathways as other drugs. With heavy use, your phasic stress responses become blunted. It means your body stops responding adaptively to stress. You're not resilient, you're numb. And when the numbness wears off, the anxiety rebound can be worse than where you started. The next day effect is subtle but real. Grogginess, a drop in motivation, and anxiety rebound as your system recalibrates. You might not connect it to the edible from last night. You might just think you're burned out, but your brain is trying to finish the emotional processing that got delayed. Clients have told me they can't sleep without it. That's the clearest sign the loop has closed. When you need a substance to access sleep, your nervous system has outsourced its job. And the more you outsource, the less it remembers how to do the work itself. Dependence keeps you stressed because it removes your own capacity to regulate. Caffeine, the morning crutch that keeps you wired. There's the one almost nobody questions because we treat it like water. Coffee, 3rd cup before noon, maybe another at 2 p.m. Sometimes it's not even about the caffeine. It's about the ritual, the pause, the feeling that you're doing something for yourself during a hard day. I understand that. But your biology doesn't care about the ritual. Caffeine is a direct cortisol trigger. Even if you drink it every day, your body still mounts a stress response. A 2024 study found that habitual caffeine users show greater cortisol release under psychosocial lab stress than people who don't use caffeine. Even daily drinkers still mount a full stress response. Here is the number that matters. 7 to 8 cups of coffee in a day, about 750 milligrams, produces strong cortisol increases at every time point measured. But even moderate use, around 3 cups, still elevates your stress response. And timing matters enormously. Afternoon coffee flattens the natural cortisol decline that should happen in the afternoon. When you drink coffee at 2 p.m., you're pushing the line back up. You're not tired because you're lazy. You're tired because your cortisol curve flattened by a flat white. Over time, this flattens your daily curve. That's associated with poorer sleep quality, more inflammation, and a harder time recovering from stress. And here is the loop that traps people. Poor sleep from caffeine means you wake up groggy. So you need more caffeine in the morning. More caffeine raises cortisol. Higher cortisol makes the day feel more stressful. And a more stressful day makes you want wine at night. Your morning coffee and your evening wine aren't separate habits. They're the same loop, wearing different costumes. One revs you up in the morning, so the other can pretend to calm you down at night. Neither one is giving your nervous system what it actually needs, which is a clear rhythm and real recovery. Biologically, caffeine is a stressor dressed up as a productivity tool. What actually works? Paying into your resilience account. So if these 3 habits are loans, What does actual payment into your resilience account look like? Let me give you 3 things that rebuild your cortisol rhythm instead of breaking it. And none of them require a wellness retreat or a $100 supplement. First, a real sleep routine. Same bedtime, same wake time, even on weekends. Dim the lights an hour before bed. No screens for at least 30 minutes. I know that sounds basic, but your cortisol curve is rebuilt by consistency, not by intensity. When your brain knows what time the lights go out, it can start lowering cortisol on schedule. Second, reading, not business books, fiction, or something completely unrelated to your work. Reading shifts your brain out of problem-solving mode without chemical suppression. It's active rest. That is a bridge between the workday and actual sleep. Third, 5 minutes of slow breathing or meditation. I don't mean an hour on a cushion. I mean sitting in a chair, breathing in for 4 counts and out for 6 for 5 minutes. That activates your parasympathetic nervous system. It lowers cortisol without borrowing from tomorrow. Research on mindfulness and self-regulation has shown that these small practices build resilience over time. They aren't quick fixes, they're infrastructure. You don't need to quit everything today. You need to make one small swap tonight. One, because real calm is built, not borrowed, and your nervous system knows the difference. That's the difference between real calm and borrowed calm. Your body feels it, even when your mind doesn't. If you want to rebuild your sleep step by step, I have a video on that right here. Subscribe for more on stress and resilience. I'll see you there.